So here you are at Google and with all these amazing people, and everybody's so excited to hear your story. But before we jump into your book and what makes you so amazing, how would Tina Clark, how would you say and how would you kind of introduce yourself?
Wow.
Not to put you on the spot.
Well, I've been a musician and songwriter and producer as long as I can remember. I've been gay as long as I can remember. I have been an Episcopalian as long as I can remember. I have started my company 22 years ago, DMI Music and Media. I am a mom. I am a grandmother now as of 3 months ago. And I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, and I'm all of those things. And I think that's what most of us are. We're the sum of many things. We're not just one. And I think not to jump right in there with that, but it is Pride Month. And I think it's important to know that for us to know people and know each other, because it's really easy to put folks in categories and in boxes. And then once we do that, they become discriminated against. And so I always like to say that I'm all of those things. I have never done anything career-wise but the music business. I moved to LA, 35 years ago. We just recently moved to Atlanta, and LA was very good to me and still is. My company is out in LA, but I wrote this book. It was released on Simon & Schuster in October of this past year, and it's been an amazing journey. And so I'm just very grateful, and I'm grateful to be here. I met Ginger at Christy Hefner was doing a book signing party for me the month it came out here, and that's where I met Ginger. So thank you for having me here today. And I met this amazing woman, and we just hit it off on the phone. And Josh. So thank y'all. Appreciate it.
And now it's now, right? So let's unpack a little bit of the book and you and your experience. So Mississippi, 1950s and 60s, there you are, starting out. And I don't want to give the book away for everybody, but there are a couple of things that were really interesting. And I'd love for you to maybe go into how your experience growing up in the household with Lamar Clark and Vivian, your mom, shaped who you are today.
Well, my mom was a songwriter in the big band era, and she had regional success, but not really success in the way we would probably define it. She spent a lot of time in New Orleans writing with a very well-known orchestra leader there. And so she drugged me to New Orleans with her all the time from a very early age. And I fell in love with New Orleans and in love with the music and in love with jazz. And my first professional gig was with this orchestra in New Orleans. And it was, so, I grew up on a farm. My father was the wealthiest man around anywhere in those areas, or one of the wealthiest in Mississippi. And but I was all my sisters had grown up. They were much older than me, and so it was almost kind of like being an only child. I was very close with my sisters, but it was like having four mothers. And so I really grew up on the farm, and my mom was always listening to Billie Holiday, Nat King Cole, Ella Fitzgerald, Ray Charles, Nina Simone, on and on. So that's the music I grew up listening to, as well as the music that my nannies, the lady that took care of me, and then her best friend. One listened to juke joint music, another listened to gospel. So I had a pretty. It's I guess it's no big surprise that my success was in R&B music and pop music, R&B pop. But people would say to me, I would always, any interview I would do, in my music career, one of the first things that the interviewer would say, well, how did a white girl from Mississippi end up writing and producing R&B music? And I really got tired of that question. But it was, I would say that, what do you think I was going to write country because of the way I talk? It's twang. Um, I just say that R&B songwriters never die; they just become country writers. It's a lot alike in a way, in some ways, just the groove's a little different. Um, but soul, and not to be cliche, but soul has no color. And when I would sit down to write at the piano, I didn't think, oh, I'm going to write an R&B song, or oh, I'm going to write a jazz song, or pop song. It's just what came out, and what comes out comes from here, and then that comes out here. So a lot of my influence was there, and then I think my business, because I've always been split down the middle as far as creative and business, which is somewhat different. People tell me. But I think that came from my dad, because my dad was such a self-made entrepreneur from zero, from had nothing to become who he was in the oil business. And but I think sitting in the back seat and listening to him make deals and will and deal, and he never, he loved two things, and that was making money and women. And so, yeah, I got to hear how he did business. And I think that's the reason that I was able to be a chameleon in the music business, because a lot of my friends, if I had just been a songwriter, I would have been out of business a long time ago, because when really in the R&B world, when hip hop and rap came on, if you were writing for, the Whitney Houstons of the world, and Aretha Franklin's, et cetera, whatever, whoever you were writing for as a songwriter, because everybody they needed songs. Then everything started changing in that world. Is not necessarily changed as much in the country music, but it totally did in R&B. Everything dried up and became much smaller. So I'm glad that I had created a production company. I'm glad that I had created, I thought as a songwriter, I have no control once my song is handed off to a producer, because I was not allowed to produce because I was a woman. Oh, yeah, in the music business. It was very sexist during those days, and still is to some extent. But you weren't allowed to produce. They wanted you could be a singer, maybe play in the band, very rarely if you think back. But you could be a singer, you could be a songwriter, but pretty much that was about it. Not a producer. That was a guy's job. So I wasn't allowed to do that. And then finally, when a woman gave me a break, a female artist, Vesta, who was on A&M, gave me a break, and I wrote and produced a #1 hit for her. Then all of a sudden, overnight, I'm saying this as a joke, but that's the way they looked at it, I was a producer. I'd always been a producer. So I had a production company. Then I thought, okay, now when I produce a song, I'm not able to control the distribution of it because I'm not the label. So I'm really kind of a stepchild here in the label, because most of the promotion money is going to go to the label, not the production companies. So I thought, okay, I need to start a label. And so I had labels of various other labels. And so it was just about becoming a chameleon. And I think writing for film and television too made me a chameleon. And so I've never done anything but music. And when I started DMI 22 years ago, it was DMI Music and Media. It was because I never wanted to stop doing music. I didn't want it to be about age. I didn't want it to be about what the latest rage was in music and style. And so it worked. But I think that really parlays into any career. When I have so many young people that come to me as want me to mentor them in the music business or ask me, say, oh, I want to do this or I want to do that. Well, you need to go learn the entire business of music. And so you really know what you want to do. Because if you want to be Beyonce, that's one of a gazillion chances. I'm not trying to squash your dreams. But if you're sure that you want to be in the music business, even if you don't make it as Beyonce, then go learn what all those other things are. And I think that's really, and I'm sure you get a lot of those experiences here where you work. But I think having that, they both influenced me, knowingly or not, in music and in business. So I always say in college, if I had it to do over again, I would have majored in business and minored in music.
You know, as you're talking about that, I was thinking and setting the stage for your mother in her favorite pink negligee, with her favorite drink, and maybe at the piano on one of her trips to New Orleans, and thinking about what that must have felt like as a young girl, you know, and seeing how much your mother loved music and tried so hard, but never quite kind of got her chance. Your dad not really supporting her as far as thinking it was something that she should spend her time doing, and then parlay as you parlayed that story and shared it, and about the opportunities that you had, it just seems like, you know, you accomplished something that your mother wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, and she lived her life through me. She loved it. She loved every moment. She was my balcony person. And she was, I don't care if I was playing at the, because for years before I ever had, you know, became successful in the music business, yeah, I did what every musician does. I was in bands and I played all over the country. I don't care. And then after college, well, I played in college, but I went on tour after. But I don't care if I was playing in a Holiday Inn in Perry, Georgia. My mother was in the audience. Now, yeah, she was drinking and she was having a good time, but she was in the audience. So she was extremely supportive of me. And one of the things that I was able to do for her that I still may get a little choked up, I'll try not to, is that when I first moved to LA, my first break was, I laugh at this now because it's not your Academy Award winner movie, but I worked on Police Academy 2, and then I worked on Police Academy 3. And I decided after Police Academy 3 that I probably better not do another Police Academy up to 15, or I was only going to be known as the Police Academy music person. But they needed a 40s, the producer needed a 40s piece that was playing in a diner. It was only going to be on for 15 seconds or 20 seconds. He said, do you know how you can get your hands, because I was music director and I was writing some of the music too. He said, do you know how you can get your hands on a 40s piece? I said, yeah. I said, I got a whole library of 78s. And he goes, what? I said, yeah, my mom was a big band writer in the 40s. And there's some great stuff. And he said, well, bring me something and just hear it. I said, okay, I got to go find something to play a 78. And so I went to Warner Brothers after I got this little machine, and I played it for him, and it was a song called Let's Face It. And he loved it, and I was able to put it in the movie. And so I went home, and I had just moved. You know, I'd been in LA. It was the reason I moved to LA eventually, but because I got this gig. And so I go to Meridian, Mississippi with my mom, and I said, I want you to see the movie, and I want you to see your name on the screen. So we sat in the theater in Meridian, Mississippi, and watched Police Academy, and she saw her name come across the screen. Oh. And that was her claim to fame. And from the money that she made on that, because after my parents' divorce, which you'll read about in the book and everything, my mother had nothing. She was married to, you know, the wealthiest man, raised 4 daughters, and married for 28 years and ended up with nothing. And so this was, to her, was a big deal. And so she was able to help buy this Caprice Classic. I'll never forget it. It was baby blue with a dark blue navy vinyl top.
Chevy Capri. Love
it. And on the back, on her tag, because I think it was like one of the first years you could personalize your tag, it said PA2 TNKU. And my mom would drive around this little town in Waynesboro, Mississippi, and with her Capri Classic with Police Academy. Thank you. So she was able to, and she was always, once she got her song in that movie, I swear, until the day she died, she was still pitching me songs to go with the And I go, Mom, I haven't found anything that has 40s music yet.
I recall a part in the book, and we're sharing here, where you found your mom, or you came home and the house was eerily quiet. And I won't share the story because everybody can read the book, but there's several things that you talked about in your book about how things were handled and how your father didn't want people to know certain things and how his reputation was more important than anything. And here you are, a kid growing up with her dad primarily until you were 12 or 13. And I have to imagine the level of grit that those experiences helped build in you and how that shaped who you are today and how that has helped you get through challenges today.
Yeah, I think that, as we all know, secrets and lies are the worst. And also what we've become, I say, very familiar with today, not to get political, but what we're dealing with today is gaslighting. And I don't know, do all of y'all know what gaslighting is? Okay, so that term, which is, convincing and trying to make someone believe an alternate reality. And so it is definitely, I can't say that the South owns it, but it is highly rampant, or was in the South, and still is. It's like I always say, it's like, make sure that it's all about winning Lawn of the Month and everything looking beautiful on the outside when it's a shit show behind the doors. And can I say that word? Okay. And so it's, unless you find a way to get out of that and find your reality, it can mess you up for life. And then you can perpetuate that through your children, through your grandchildren, thank God, I was able to discern that, have some discernment about that early on and fought against it. Because it's like, if daddy says this happened and what I saw didn't happen, what I just saw did not happen, then okay, I guess I'm crazy. And that's kind of the way it starts, It's like what you heard you didn't hear, what you saw you didn't see, what happened didn't happen. But also it's a lot about just secrets and lies. And like I said, I know that the South doesn't have ownership of it, but it's all about, you're so worried about, everybody's so concerned about what the neighbors think or what the town thinks. And everybody already knows everybody's business, for the most part. And what does it matter? What matters is family, and what matters are people that you love and that love you. And, I would always say, these people that y'all are so worried about knowing things, they wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire. They don't care. And if anybody, to me, that pretends to have, the more perfect that families or people pretend that their lives are, the more screwed up they are behind closed doors. I have seen it a million times. And I decided to live my truth a long time ago, a very long time ago. I don't think it was ever a conscious decision that today I'm coming out or I'm whatever. It was just realizing that whatever was the truth is I had to live, whatever that may be. And I couldn't go along with the lies anymore. I couldn't go along with the stories that were not true. or the alternate reality of the word we've learned recently. I just I could not do it anymore. And I think that's one of the reasons that I wrote this book, Southern Discomfort, was because it was it was for my it was for myself too, because I felt like I have, and I think so many families are, everybody's got issues and everybody has, it's kind of like, I don't know if y'all have ever seen that poster that says, or those cocktail napkins that says, what do we do with crazy? We set it on the porch and give it a cocktail. And you see this woman sitting out drinking a cocktail. Well, that's very Southern. And so, yeah, just, you got to put it on the porch and give it a cocktail because, there's a lot of love in there too. And my family, I mean, I have great sisters, and I I adored my mother, and I respected my father's business acumen. And there are things that obviously I loved about my father. We had a complicated relationship, and my mother would always say to me, "He's a complicated man." Even after they had been divorced, as long as they had been married, she would say to me, your father is a complicated man. And so it's just so important to live your truth, whatever the situation may be, because I think one of the most important things I can say, and I do, and I talk about this a lot, is that, and I have seen it no matter what the situation may be, if you don't live your truth, it will live it for you. It's going to come out in some way. I'm not talking about just being gay. I'm talking about whatever the situation may be. If you've decided to be an attorney because your father pressured you to be an attorney, or to be a doctor, or to be a teacher, or whatever it may be, if you are pressured to do things by people or your family and you cave into that because maybe you want to play the violin in the symphony, or maybe you wanted to be a ballet dancer, or maybe you wanted to be an engineer and not a whatever. If you don't, or maybe you're in a marriage or relationship that you're in because of pressure or because you don't feel like you can get out of, or you're settled in a relationship because you don't feel like you can leave or get out of, it will live it for you. And it may come out in, it comes out in many ways. It'll come out in some kind of destruction, whatever it may be, whether it's some kind of eating disorder or addiction, or whatever, or sickness. I've had friends that have stayed in marriages when they found out their husbands had, you know, dozens of affairs, but they just felt like they couldn't leave because of their children or familiarity. But they were always sick after that. And they never correlated those two things. But they were sick, in my mind, because they settled. Because they settled for something inside themselves that they knew was not okay. So it can be a million different reasons. But I think that's one of the biggest things that I got out of writing this book, and the healing of this is just living your truth.
You know, it's interesting. I'm thinking about some of the passages in the book around African Americans at that time, right? I mean, you had a African American, really kind of a mammy, right? Mm-hmm. And you talked about when some of the migrant workers would come, and there was a little girl who you're like, oh, wow, I want to play with her. And your mother took an SOS pad. Brillo pad. And scrubbed your hands.
Pink Brillo pad.
And then you mentioned several other things in the book that kind of talk about, obviously, how African Americans were treated back then. Question for you. When were you first aware of your level of privilege? When was it something that was consciously like, wow, my life is different because I am white?
I don't think I ever thought of the word privilege because I never saw myself that way. Different, yes.
Okay.
I did not understand the haves and the have-nots. I did not understand and that's what happened in that scene, as you know, is that, and my mother, I can truly say my mother was not a racist. My mother caved in to me. When I look at it later on in life, my mother caved in to a hierarchy of what she was supposed to be and what she was not for that one moment, because everybody around her was like that. My mother never said that word again. She never had never showed me any inkling of that ever. And I think it changed her life as much that day as it did mine, because as she was scrubbing my hand, telling me that black people have germs and that I cannot hold hands with a black person, I said, as I was crying, hanging over the sink, and I was like 5 years old, I said, Mom, I said, but Mama, I said, the lady who raised me, the nanny, she doesn't have, she kisses me, she tucks me in at night, she fixes my hair, she makes my breakfast. I love her. She she doesn't have germs. And she said, she's different. And I said, no. And I was crying. And we were having this conversation as this was going on. And that's when she dropped my hand and just fell into her hands like this on the counter and started sobbing. And my nanny was standing there with her head down. And my mom just got up and walked out of the kitchen and walked by my nanny and patted her on the shoulder in shame. And like I say, my mother was drinking. I'm not saying excuses, but I was so, it was like surreal. The whole thing was surreal. But at the time, I realized that all of these things were something. Look, I am not perfect, and I'm not saying that, but for whatever reason, at that time, at that place, I realized I would never think like these people because I did not see it. I did not see it. I did not like it. I did not believe it. It made no sense to me. It made no sense to me that I would go into a doctor's office and there would be there was 3 doctor's offices in this little town. And there was a division in each one where you check out and pay. On one side it said colored, on the other side it said white. If I would go in there, I'd always go around the thing and go in the other side, even at a very young age. Because, look, I'm not Joan of Arc. I'm not saying that. But I couldn't stand it. Even at a very early age, I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. I'm going to go sit over there. And if somebody was made to sit in the back seat, which they always were, I would get in the back seat because it never made any sense. And for whatever reason, whether it all came tumbling down on me that particular day, or if it was innately inside of me, whatever reason, it was different. And it gave me, I feel like, the courage. Well, one thing I thought too, when I realized at a very early age that I was gay, and as I got older, I used to think about, I wonder if God gave me that discernment about discrimination at an early age because God, she or he knew that I was going to be discriminated against one day and I was going to be a minority and I was going to not experienced to that extent because, to your point, I did come from a privileged family. But it doesn't mean I haven't experienced it in other places. Rarely, but I have. So it was a life changer, and I have spent, so much of my life, and especially in these last 10 or 15 years, really trying to make change in Mississippi and in the South, and really trying to be an activist where laws are, whether it's with HB 1523, before all these other horrible laws around abortion have been passed, but HB 1523 was discrimination law against LGBT in Mississippi, and they were one of the first to pass it. This was December of 16. And I knew the governor, and I tried to reach out to him. I knew it wasn't going to make a difference, but I tried, and to no avail. And so I just thought, well, he used his pen to sign this horrible bill, the worst in the country against gays. So I'll use my pen. And it was the best weapon I thought I could use. And it was, I wrote a song called My Mississippi. And you can listen to it on iTunes. But I put together a march with HRC and GLAAD out of New York and D.C., and we did a march in Jackson to the governor's mansion, and I had a choir sing the song to the governor. I think he was probably hiding inside behind a curtain or something. But anyway, it's just about being on the ground and making a difference. And, I feel about when people ask me about moving from L.A. to Atlanta, I feel like we're preaching to the choir in L.A., and that's a good thing. I mean, obviously, and you guys are just rocking it, man, in Illinois and Chicago. I cannot tell you how excited I was when I flew in yesterday and I was driving into town and see that huge pride flag with the American flag. I took photos of it and posted it. And then it's just everything y'all are doing around pro-choice and everything else. But it seems like that the South, particularly Mississippi and Alabama, are just trying to see who can race to the bottom. And one day you may think it's Alabama, and the next day it's Mississippi. And I love where I grew up. I love Mississippi. And not to use an overused term, but we can do better than that. And there's some incredible people there, incredible artists, incredible musicians, incredible authors, incredible liberal community as well in Mississippi, just outnumbered. And I think we just keep having hope that there will be change, and there will be compassion, and there will be empathy, and there will be love, and a thing called equality. And right now it's got a ways to go. But if I don't jump in and try to help all I can there and in other southern states, what good am I doing? So.
Well, your story is fascinating. The book was phenomenal. I like I mentioned, I feel like I know you just from having that experience. I highly recommend everybody make time to read it. And I actually got the book on Audible because I'm an Audible kind of a gal. And she narrates it, which I didn't realize until today. I was like, I don't know, there's something about her voice that just seems like she's been in the kitchen with me making falafels.
What were we cooking?
Falafels, because I'm vegan, but they're really good too. But I'm like, wow, she seems like a friend. And so it's really, really awesome to be able to hear her personal story narrated by her. My personal favorite is the way her father stutters and he says, Vivian, you better get back in here, Vivian. It's just awesome. And the way she says it is very memorable and fun. So as we wrap up, any closing words at all, Tina, before we allow people to ask questions?
No, I'm just grateful for being here, and I've been, traveling all over the country, talking about these changes and the most, to me, it's been so important that this book has given me the platform to talk about domestic violence, to talk about addictions, alcoholism, because my mother, to talk about coming out. And in Mississippi in the 70s, and, multiple other things that go on in life, but that this, and also equally important, racism. And because this book has a lot of that in it, of a time and a place. And I think I felt too the reason it was so important to write this book when I did was because when you see, like a turtle climbing a hill, and all of a sudden the turtle turns around and starts going the other direction. And that's the way I started seeing things. And I think a lot of states, I'll call it states, had makeup on. Is the way I remember one time, most of the artists that I have produced and written for have been female African Americans, and everybody from Aretha to Patti LaBelle to Shaka, whoever. So Patty said to me one day, girl, I was just down in Mississippi, down playing it, and this was before everything got bad, really bad. I was down there and playing at one of the casinos, and Mississippi has changed. I remember the days when I couldn't even drive through Mississippi. And I said, I don't know, Patty. And she goes, well, and I said, it's got makeup on. I said, yeah, there's change. There's definitely change, but not the kind of change you're talking about, because there's makeup. And she goes, what do you mean makeup? And I said, it's the law. You just can't outright be racist without, obviously there being consequences, hopefully. And I said, but you flick that makeup enough, and you're going to see the ugly. Not in everybody. I'm not saying that, but it's there. And look, I don't think once again, I don't think the South holds a license on that. I think obviously there's many states, but I think now with where I saw us and what was happening in this country over the last few years, it's emboldened Americans, particular Americans, to wash off the makeup and just be upfront and in your face with discrimination. And it's scary, and it's wrong, and it's horrible. And so I just felt like that this book reflected a time of then, but a reflection of also what we don't want today.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Sure.
I will open it up for questions to the audience. Does anybody have a question for Tena?
I just wanted to ask, just with Southern culture and just the traditionalism around where you grew up and what you grew up, what's your relationship with religion and the religious community?
That's a great question. I don't think anybody's asked me that. Well, I grew up, yes, Southern Baptist. And I'm a recovering Southern Baptist. But I've been an Episcopalian for, the last 30-something years. And it could have been Methodist, it could have been whatever. It's just that when I went to LA, I was searching for a place of inclusion. I was searching because spirituality and Christianity for me has always been an important part of my life. And not that I feel like you have to have organized religion, because I don't. Kind of as Maya Angelou says, church is where it can be wherever you are. Mm-hmm. And but I felt like that even though I talk about in the book where I grew up with, it was the same thing as kind of racism in a way that I felt about racism. I would see all these people partying the night before when I was little at our house or wherever. But then on Sunday morning, they were all in the choir singing to Jesus, you know. And so I was always trying to put those two things together too, because not that you can't go out and have a good time on Saturday night, but you just can't be a completely different person the next day. But even with all of those dichotomies, and we all have our hypocritical sides to us, I just still, my faith was very important to me. But I could not reconcile going to a place that told me that said to me, God didn't love me, or we hate the sin, but we love the sinner. And, you know, that was not who I worshiped. To me, Christianity was about love, about mercy, about grace, about redemption, inclusion, forgiveness, not inclusion. I mean, not exclusion. There's nothing about Christianity that's about exclusion. So that's a long way of saying I had to find somewhere that I felt like that loved me just like God loved me for exactly who I was. Didn't want anything different. Wanted me to be a good person and love me for who I am. And that's what I found at All Saints Episcopal Church in Pasadena. And if that had changed, then I would have gone somewhere else, because I don't want to go and hear someone talk about hate and how, you know, you're different and God doesn't love you because of who you love, or because of the color of your skin, or because of where you're from, or what country you're from, or what religion you are. I don't think that, you know, I don't think any religions is God's favorite pet student, or pet religion. I think we're all on our different roads, whatever those roads may be, to the same place. So I have never wavered in my faith. I mean, I've had people to ask me before, just in life, how can you be a Christian? How can you, even today with the way that the far right has almost hijacked Christianity? It's nauseating to me. It's like somebody hijacking, you know, like, what do you call it when somebody breaks in and takes your identity? That's not the God I know. And so I just, I've never wavered, because for me, I know what redemption is. I know what grace is, and mercy and love. And that's what I want to strive for, not hate and not exclusion.
Thanks for sharing that. It's a deep question. Any other questions from the audience?
I don't have to go back to work, do you?
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Julie. Thanks so much for coming.
Oh,
I
thank
haven't
you.
read your book yet, and I can't wait to.
Thank you.
So I think you were generous in saying that we're awesome here in Illinois for the stuff that's going on. And I think there are parts of Illinois that it's awesome, Chicago specifically. But like in many states, the urban areas are very different than the rural areas. So I'm curious about the different places that you've lived. If you have experienced the same thing and think the same thing in regards to just where our country is and the makeup that people wear or don't wear, as you described it, I think we're getting farther apart based on the proximity that we have to diversity and the openness. So very specifically, in more urban areas, there tends to be more inclusion, more inclusiveness, and in rural areas, there doesn't seem to be. And I know that's a generalization, but so you came from Mississippi, you've lived in LA, very urban. You're in Atlanta, pretty urban for Georgia. So I'm curious about your perspective on that, because it's concerning to me about our states' rights, because I don't even think that as states we really think the same thing.
Well,
Good question.
yeah, and it keeps me up at night. And I think for me, because I'm very politically involved, I'm politically involved in DC, I'm politically involved in, like I said, in the specific areas where I am. And it does keep me up at night because, look, Atlanta is no different than New York or Chicago or LA. It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. Atlanta is to me, is really more exciting than LA in the standpoint of it's a boiling pot of change. I mean, people walk there, talk there, they put their money where their mouth is, but not just write a check. I mean, people are on the ground. And some extremely exciting things are coming out of Atlanta, just like in Chicago. I mean, when you look at Stacey Abrams and but so many things on so many levels, whether it's refugees or whether it's women's rights, etc. Look, it wasn't a good day and it's not a good day right now with the governor's situation, and especially for the film and television industry. If that happens, that will decimate so much that has gone forward in Georgia because it's billions of dollars, it's 90,000 jobs, and it's ridiculous. So, with that said, so I live in a rural area outside Atlanta. But that rural area outside Atlanta where I live is like a liberal bubble. And I hate to use the word liberal because the minute you use the word liberal, anybody that's a moderate or far right, they're totally tuned out. I don't mean it like that. I mean, they're people that think compassionately. But from all over, I was telling Ginger, all over the country. I mean, from people that live there now are from, most of the people I know there now, well, I'd say half, are from LA or Chicago or New York or San Francisco or, whatever. But on that drive for me from where I live outside 20 minutes south of the airport, and the airport is it's Mississippi, Alabama. But you can get that same thing in LA when you drive outside of LA, going to San Francisco. If you go through Bakersfield and those same areas out there, you might as well be in that rural area in Georgia and Mississippi. So that's why, yes, predominantly California. California is as blue as you can get. But I think that I felt a long time ago, and I'll just say it, I felt a long time ago that when Rush Limbaugh that radio show first came on, I think it was in the 80s, I want to say, I just remember going, what in the hell is this? How can someone, I don't even remember who was president then, may have been Clinton. How can a radio person get on and say horrible, awful things about a president of the United States? I mean, naively, that's what I was thinking. And as time went on and I saw this thing growing and I would hear people talking, and especially from where I'm from in the South, all of a sudden it was like this tsunami of hate and just spewing and nastiness. And then I really believe in my heart that was the start, and he sowed the underbelly division of this country. Because people could talk and say, I may have a relative that I disagree with, and we could have a conversation, but not like it is now. Because I really believe that where we are in a country right now, that everything that is happening, this is just me, but is really about putting, in the macro level, is about trying to put women back in a place where men feel comfortable. And all of these things, and whether it's around what you do with your body, are, you know, I think the Me Too movement, which has been incredible, but also just turned up the fuel even more. And I always felt like when Obama was president, I felt like, which I was, you know, filled with, and but I felt like after Obama, I never thought what happened would happen. But I felt like there was going to be this last gasping breath of the old white male regime. And to me, that's exactly what's happened, but it's much broader than that. But I think that media has created, and this is not a bad thing about media, but when you have family members that all they do is sit in front of a particular show all day long, every day, and watch lies, that they begin to turn on their own family, they begin to turn on their neighbors, they begin to turn on and it becomes, I mean, we're almost, to me, like in a mental, emotional civil war. We're that divided, as y'all know. And I cannot tell you, and I'm sure y'all experience the same thing or know people. This past Thanksgiving, I cannot tell you how many people I knew that did not go home for Thanksgiving or that normally would, because he just couldn't, especially if they were from places like, I mean, maybe it's somewhere up in the Midwest that you were in some small town, or maybe it was in Alabama or whatever, but they just couldn't deal with it. So I think it is a very scary time right now. And it is really hard for me to watch Handmaid's Tale. Just because to me, it's, if as crazy as it is, it's so funny because I said this morning to my partner, you know, I was working out this morning and I thought I was coming down the street and I thought, I never thought of Chicago. Like, I love Chicago, I said, but I wish Handmaid's Tale hadn't referenced Chicago so much in it. But, you know, it's like reality, I mean, fantasy or, you know, these things start becoming, it's like a reality. And not that I think that would ever actually happen, but I think everything that's happening right now is about controlling women. Now, yes, racism is at the top of it. Discrimination is at the top of it. But it's all about cleansing, basically. It's all about keeping people out that are different. We need to get women in their place, and we need to keep everybody else out that's different. And if they're different, we need to keep them in their place. Does that answer your question? Does that scare you more?
It validates that there are more people in Steve like that.
That's awesome.
Well, and look, I hope, there's nothing that would make me happier than to be wrong about everything I feel. I keep thinking every day I'm going to wake up and it's going to be all a bad dream, or it's going to be that all of a sudden everybody's going to come together and sing Kumbaya, or that. But I also feel, and maybe we'll end on this note. Yeah, we'll end on this note, that I think it is pretty close to impossible. Let's just say if you're a racist. If you have never sat down at your dinner table in your kitchen and had dinner and broken bread together, or wherever, with a family that is Black, you will never be the same, because you could never box people up in that box.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
And that's no different if it's gay. If somebody is extremely homophobic, then you know what? Why don't me and my partner and our kids come and sit down and why don't we cook dinner for you? Why don't you come over? We garden, we cook, we take kids to school, we have grandbabies, we go to church, we live life just like you do. And whether that's Hispanic, whether it's, whatever it may be. So that's what we need more of in this country, is to be able to come together and talk. That's it. I may not agree with you, you may not agree with me, but we can sit there and talk about it and at least not hate each other's guts.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
If I had to say, from listening to the book, there's three names that come to mind. From Virgie and her saying baby girl, from your father saying Monkey Joe, and your mother saying aloha, baby. Aloha. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.